Okay guys, welcome to this video in Aussie English. Today I wanted to talk to you a bit about why and how I do my different episodes, so why I do them without a script and how I set them up. So I guess first and foremost the expression ones. I love to go through the definition of each of these words that are in a given expression, and I often choose expressions that I will hear myself say, as well as when I have conversations with other friends. I'm all the time writing down these sorts of expressions that I hear and that I use, and especially when I talk with foreigners who speak English as a second language, a lot of the time I use these expressions without even thinking, and they will say, "What did you just say? What does that mean? That sounds so weird." And then I realize, all of a sudden I'll be like, okay, what does this expression literally mean? It doesn't make any literal sense, but this is what we mean when we say this expression. So that is how I like to choose them. I'm not really into just searching on the web for weird, strange expressions for the sake of teaching them. There are a lot of weird Australian ones. I mean, one example could be as dry as a nun's nasty, and it's a bit of a vulgar expression, but at the same time, it's not really used very often. I'm not even going to define it here, but if you want to look it up, as dry as a nun's nasty, you can look it up on Google and you'll find stereotypical Australian expressions like that, but they're not very often heard, at least with native speakers, unless they're trying to be a little cliche and, make fun of the fact that someone's Australian or that they're Australian, or overplay the fact that they are Australian. So they're the kinds of expressions I like to choose, and the ones that I use. They're ones that I catch myself saying, and they're ones that I hear other people bring up and ask me to clarify on. So that's evidence to me that it's worth explaining in an episode. If a foreigner has an issue with a certain expression that I use, then that shows me that it's worth explaining. Another reason that I like to go over the expressions in a non-scripted way is because I feel like if I were to read off a script, it's a little disingenuous. It wouldn't reflect the kind of English you're going to hear on a daily basis spoken by native speakers. So what do I mean by this? If I were to read off a script, the sentences would be ideally perfectly formed. They would be short, there would be no you-knows, there would be no buts or ums or, but, and those parts of English are important, I feel, and it's really important to include them in these recordings. I like that I say, and ums and buts, and even though when I go through and write the transcripts, I always kind of pinch myself and get irritated when I see you-knows and ums and ahs in the middle of sentences, because written English would never look like that, and you're taught to try and minimize how much you say that in school, especially if you're giving a speech or some kind of talk. But a lot of native speakers use this. I use this. I use this when I'm speaking with most of my friends. I use it when I'm speaking about things that I don't know much about, when I know things that I know incredibly well. Like even if I were to give a talk about my PhD project, I would probably still say, but I try and minimize the amount of times that I say these things. But at the same time, they are things that native speakers say all the time. And they are the kinds of things that you need practice listening to and hearing. And I feel like if I were to read off a transcript, it would be giving you a false impression or a different ideal, a different experience than spoken English. If you were to speak with me in a room about a certain topic, I would talk like this, where I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It's more a stream of thought as opposed to perfectly sensical grammatical sentences put together. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I kind of like, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating. I like doing these things without a transcript. The English isn't always 100% grammatically correct, But at the same time, it's the kind of English you're going to hear, and that's why I feel it is so important that you get exposure and experience listening to and reading of these transcripts, the kind of English that I'm going to use. And that's why I include the ums and the ahs and the you knows in there, also so that you can see that it wasn't me mispronouncing a word or whatever. You can see exactly what that vowel sound in there, or the sentence in the middle of a sentence, what it all means. So that's why I try and include it in the transcripts as well. The last bit I guess I should go over is the pronunciation exercises. I still want to hear your feedback on this, because I don't know necessarily whether or not you enjoy these, whether or not they're helping. I hope they're helping. It's the kind of thing that I use when I am practicing my French and my Portuguese, and the podcasts that I listen to when I'm doing my Portuguese and French practice often have these kinds of exercises in them, and I feel that they've helped me personally improve my Portuguese and my French a lot, especially learning on my own. So that's why I feel like they're important, but I would love to hear what you guys think, and if the majority of you don't like them, then I can always remove them. If the majority of you like them immensely and want me to include more of them, let me know. I'm thinking of doing some episodes that will just be listening and repeating exercises. But yeah, truly give me some feedback. Let me know what you think, what you guys want. If you have any feedback too on the structure and the plans that I put together for these episodes, let me know. Do you want them longer or shorter? You're always welcome to give me feedback, because at the end of the day, I'm creating this podcast to serve your needs and to help you improve your English. So any feedback about how I can best do that would be immensely appreciated. So that's probably enough for today, guys. I thought I would give you a bit of a breakdown of how and why I put together these lessons the way that I do, and I'll chat to you soon. All the best.